it's worth it. And there's not enough people. I don't think there's enough people talking about mental health overall, or how we've struggled, or how we've gotten through it, or what we've learned. Right. There's more and more.
Hey guys, welcome to Surviving Myself. This is Woman-Tini, and this is what I'm lit up about today. I'm so excited about this guest that is with me today. We've talked quite a bit, but we haven't had the time to do a podcast together, so I'm excited that it's finally happening. She, like myself, is a suicide survivor. She lost her leg in an attempt at 17 years old. She's now an international speaker, author of a book called Life in Spite of Me. She's been featured on Oprah, and she's a popular motivational speaker at colleges, churches, women's and youth events, and especially suicide prevention outreaches. She's a graduate of Moody Bible Institute. She's a wife and a mother and founder of Reaching You. Like myself, she speaks out to help those people who are hurting, those people that are hopeless and lost, feel depressed and suicidal. Please welcome Kristen Jane Anderson. Thank you for being here.
So much. I'm honored to be here. I'm excited to talk with you. So excited.
Please tell us your story, or however you want to go about it.
Oh, sure. I grew up, it's very interesting to me the older that I get when I think back on my childhood, because I really had a great childhood. I think a lot of times people think somebody who struggles with suicidal thoughts or depression comes from a broken home, whatever type of background you want to put on it. But I did not. I actually came from a nice family. My parents were always married. My parents had nice jobs, good jobs. I had everything I needed, most of what I wanted. And as a child, I thought life was just going to be that way. Like it would always be wonderful, easy, carefree, beautiful. But that all started to change around the time I got to junior high, which I know is common. Like kids start to struggle in junior high and high school, but it all hit me at once, it started to feel like. And I remember realizing that there were wars going on in the world, that homelessness was a real issue, that sexual abuse was a real issue. And I really just became burdened by it. I couldn't believe some of the things I was hearing because I didn't know how all those things were happening beforehand. And I wanted to do something to make a difference in the world. So for about a year, when I was in 7th grade, I volunteered at a local homeless shelter. And that homeless shelter had people that came regularly every single week. And at the end of the year, I felt like all the same people were coming and I hadn't really made a difference. I felt like I wasn't really helping anybody. So I went to high school just trying to focus on making myself, my family, and my friends happy. And in some ways that I skated by that way. I was doing okay. My first couple years of high school, I was on the soccer team. My boyfriend was prom king. So I think to me and to other people, I was doing well. Yeah. I was doing fine. But really quickly, almost at the beginning of my junior year, a number of things started to go wrong. And I just didn't know how to handle them. It all came out of right field, even more so than the things that I realized were happening in the world. When it was things happening to me, I really started to struggle. I lost 4 friends and my grandmother, all within about a year and a half's time. And I didn't know, I did grow up like going to church, but I didn't know that I could go to God for comfort, wisdom, strength, peace, understanding. I just thought that I had to handle it all on my own. And I was a friend that everybody went to for help with their problems. So I just kept what I was feeling inside. And I also didn't really know how to put words to what I was feeling. I couldn't have told you I was depressed or that I was losing hope or that I was really hurting. Maybe I could have said I was really hurting. I guess that's one thing I could have said. But I was almost like not mature enough at that age to even say that. I wanted everybody to think I was like, I had it all together. I think there's a lot of people who struggle with that now, that I just didn't want anybody to ever think anything bad about me or worry about me. And that included my parents. One of the things I look back on is I feel like I tried to protect them. I didn't want them to worry about me, so I didn't tell them a lot of the things that were happening. And that wasn't my role as a child. I shouldn't have been trying to protect them. But for some reason, I took that role on. And of course, they wish I wouldn't have done that. And I would have just told them everything that was happening. But besides the friends and my grandmother that I lost, within that year and a half's time, I was raped. And I was right before and after also being stalked by 2 young men. And there were people that I knew, but that rocked me. It for sure did. And my parents knew something was wrong because I had started through all of this, skipping school, skipping classes. I was partying like I never really did before. I was always a pretty good girl, but I was just trying to numb the pain that I felt on the inside. Like whatever made me feel a little bit better, that's what I did. And eventually, New Year's Eve of my senior year came, and I had been spiraling, but my parents had grounded me from skipping school, but they wanted me to go out with my friends that one night because it was my senior year. It was a New Year's Eve. It was actually the year 2000. So it was like special in that way.
Yeah.
And they were going to let me go out that one night. And I agreed that I would come home when they wanted me to, but I left the house knowing I wasn't going to come home at all that night. And I remember I went to the pizza restaurant I worked at. I worked my shift. A friend picked me up and we went out. And that night, different from other nights, I felt like I made a lot of good decisions. I wasn't smoking, drinking. I wasn't like even flirting with boys. I was like really trying to take care of my friends. I was a designated driver. I just felt I was like, I don't know. It was so weird that I felt like I was like doing the right thing. But at midnight, I called my mom to tell her that I wasn't going to be coming home at all that night.
Wow.
And right. And as a parent, I can imagine what that felt like for her. And my parents were always very loving, involved. They knew where I was always, all the time. It's not like they ever were like, oh, I wonder if Kristen's going to come home tonight, or I wonder where she's at. They always knew where I was. I knew that would bother her, but I had no idea how much it would worry her. And it wasn't until the next day at about 10 o'clock in the morning that I came home. And I wasn't really prepared for what was about to come. My mom, I remember the first thing she said when I walked in the door was, Kristen, we didn't know if you were dead in a ditch somewhere or what had happened to you. And I felt bad. I felt really terrible. I wasn't really trying to worry her. I really was just trying to do whatever made me feel a little bit better in the moment. Like I was in a very desperate place emotionally. I had hardly any hope left in me. And so I felt bad, but I didn't really know how to explain, what I couldn't put that into words for them. So
Right.
they thought that
Sure.
I was just they thought I was being rebellious. And
Yeah.
I understand that too. They thought I was just being rebellious, and they told me I was grounded until further notice, and they were going to take away the things I gotten for Christmas and either return them to the store or give them to somebody who would appreciate them. And my parents never gave me those type of consequences before, but they were like trying to get my attention is what I think they were trying to do. And they also told me I was grounded until further notice. I think I might have said that. And that was really hard for me as a teenage girl. I was 17 years old. My friends were my world. I would tell you that I was probably living for my friends at that point. So to be grounded until further notice was just really hard because they were my world. And I was also really, really materialistic. I found a lot of my value in the way that I looked, the clothes that I had, what people thought about that. And to have my things that I'd just gotten for Christmas taken away was just like a punch in the gut. So I remember that day I decided to sleep, and I was really tired from being up the whole night before. So I slept the whole day when I got home, and then I slept the whole night. I just slept the whole day, the whole night. And when I woke up, it just happened to be a Sunday morning. And on Sunday morning in my family, rain or shine, we always went to church. Every single Sunday morning, we went to church. I went to youth group, Sunday school, whatever it was, depending on my age. And that Sunday, like every other Sunday, we went to church. And I remember that I walked into church and I walked out of church feeling exactly the same way, just very broken, disillusioned, lost, confused, empty, numb. And when we went home, my mom laid down to sleep because she was tired from the night that she had waited up for me. So she laid down to rest. My dad at the time went to go buy a new washer and dryer. So I decided I needed to do something by myself, and to keep myself busy, I wanted to put on some videos of my nephews at the time. I just wanted to watch them because I thought they'd cheer me up and put a smile on my face. They were just really little, and they were giggling and smiling and laughing so much as they opened their Christmas presents. So I thought if I watched them do that, that would cheer me up a little bit and put a smile on my face. So I watched those videos, and it did cheer me up a little bit. But then as I was watching the videos, my best friend called, and my best friend's name was Kelly. And we've been friends since we were in second grade. And she wanted me to come over to make gingerbread houses with her because it was our last day of Christmas break before we were supposed to go back to school. And I knew I wasn't supposed to be going anywhere. I told Kelly that, but we didn't always make the best decisions together. So I made the unfortunate decision that I couldn't get any worse trouble. And I dishonestly wrote a note to my parents and told them I was going for a walk. And I just walked down the street where my friend picked me up in her car. We went to her house for a couple hours. We never made gingerbread houses. We just hung out. And then another friend drove me home, like I said, about 3 hours later. And they did that just because they were not wanting to get in trouble for taking me. They knew I was grounded. And so I started to walk home, and I just wasn't, what I've realized is I just wasn't ready because I had school the next day. I had homework I hadn't done. I had a lot that was going to hit me at once the next day. And I knew my parents probably were worried about me because I never took a walk for 3 hours before. I just needed some time. So I decided to go to the pizza restaurant that I've been working in, and I got my paycheck. I got a pack of cigarettes, and I really just tried to waste time for about a half an hour because I knew I couldn't push it any longer. I didn't want my parents to worry about me
Right.
more than
Yeah.
necessary. So after that, I was like, I just need to go home. I don't want them to worry any more than necessary. So I started to walk home, and it was almost like my legs wouldn't take me there. I just had I had nothing left. I had nothing left. So I walked over to this park that I grew up playing in. It was across the street from my parents' house. And this is a park that I played in every summer, rain or shine. We had graduation parties there, swam at the beach, basketball, volleyball, everything. And when I went to the park, I started to swing on these huge swings that they always had. And as I swung on the swings, I just started to remember all these joyful childhood memories that I had as a kid playing there. And then I started to contrast them with how I was feeling now as a teenager. Like I said, broken,
Right.
disillusioned, confused, lost, empty. And I felt like no matter how much I tried, no matter how much I prayed or hoped or believed that things would get better, they weren't getting better. And it was like I couldn't move forward, I couldn't go back. And it felt like I was going in circles, like one bad thing after another was happening. And I had no idea what to do anymore. That's the place I was in. I was like, I don't know what to do anymore. Like I really just inside suffering so deeply. And I looked around to see where else I could go because I remembered in that small town that I grew up in, about an hour north of Chicago, you're not supposed to be in the park after dark. And the police will patrol the park just to make sure nobody's in there for safety's sake. And they knew who I was because we lived on the same street as the police station. And I knew if they saw me there, they'd make me go home. But I just wasn't ready. I wanted some more time to think, gather my thoughts, gather my emotions, get ready for school the next day. So I looked around to see where else I could go. And I saw on the edge of the park, there was a train that I figured had been there for about 3 weeks because I'd driven by and it hadn't moved at all. And I figured it wasn't going anywhere. Every once in a while, that they just parked. And so I was like, probably not going anywhere. I can sit over there. They won't see me there. It'll give me some more time to think. And as I sat on the train, and people have asked me, did you sit on trains or train tracks as a kid or play close to them? And I never did. This was the first time I ever ventured that close, even though I grew up close to them, I just never did. And that day I sat there with my legs dangling, just trying to gather my thoughts. And I almost as soon as I sat down, I remembered this thought process that I'd had about 3 months beforehand. And that was as I was grieving through my friend Brandon's death. His death was the hardest for me in comparison to my other friends and even my grandmother's death because I couldn't make sense of it. I couldn't understand why he would do that, why he would do the way he did it, why he didn't ask for help, why he didn't tell anybody how he was feeling, but especially why he would it was really scary what he did to himself. So I remember thinking I could never do that. I could never take my life, especially the way that he did it. And as I was thinking through that and grieving through his death that night, my thought process just started to change. It was only and I started to think, even though I would never do it, even though I'd never do it, and I especially would never do it the way that he would do it, if I would ever do it, how would I do it? Even though I would never do it. It was so hypothetical. I didn't even see any danger in that. I just thought, I don't know, I just let my thoughts go. And I thought of all sorts of things that I'd heard about, read about, seen on TV, so on and so forth. But right in that moment, as I'm thinking through how I would do it if I wouldn't do it the way that he did it, a train went by my parents' house. And I could feel the power of the train shake our home. I could hear the whistle blare through the windows, and it just snapped in my mind. That's one way I could never live through it. And I didn't think about it again until 3 months later when I was sitting on the train that day. I had not thought about it. I wasn't planning anything. It was a completely hypothetical thought process. I never thought I'd think about it again. But when I was sitting on the train, that I made that connection to that moment in my room when I thought about how I would do it. And that's when I started to consider suicide as an option or as an answer. What's interesting is I did not think it was the answer. I knew it wasn't the answer, really. And I really, in many ways, didn't want to die. I really didn't want to die. I just didn't want to feel the pain anymore. I didn't know how to help myself anymore. I didn't know how to take another breath.
Yep.
I didn't know how to live another day. I just didn't know how to keep going. And I was back and forth. I would think things like, there's a reason I'm here, and then I don't think there's no reason I'm here. I would think there's something I'm supposed to do here, and then I don't think there's nothing I'm supposed to do here. I would think it's going to get better, and then I don't think it's not going to get any better. And I was back and forth like that for, I think, about an hour and a half until train started to
Wow.
come. And it was cold out. It was like in middle of winter, January 2nd, like 8:30 at night. And I had my winter coat on and gloves, but I could see my breath in the air. My hands were starting to get cold even with my gloves on. And I knew, like, with it getting late and colder, I couldn't stay outside much longer. I had to either go home, go somewhere, or do something, make some sort of a decision. So as the train got closer and closer, I felt like this was my chance. If I didn't do it now, I was never going to do it. And so I made the impulsive choice to lay down on the tracks right before the train got there. And I remember as I got off the train that I was sitting on, I really just tried to push down the fear and the shame, because I knew this wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. This is what I wanted to do. I just didn't know what else to do anymore. I didn't know what the answer was. And so I pushed down the fear, I pushed down the shame. And as I laid down, I remember I closed my fists, I clenched my eyes, and I turned my head in the opposite direction than where the train was coming from, because I didn't want to see it come towards me. And it was only about like a split second before I started to feel something go over me. And what I first felt was my hair, my head, and the midsection of my body just start to rise upward. I felt like I was being like sucked up underneath the train. And very quickly afterward, I felt something push me down and hold me down into the ground. I had no idea what all that was, but eventually the train like wheeled to a stop. And I remember thinking, like, is this just a bad dream? Is this really happening? Is this a nightmare? Am I alive? Am I dead? All the questions just started to come through my mind all at once. And I opened my eyes, I unclenched my fists, and I started to look around, and I could see the wheels on both sides of the tracks. And as I tried to look beyond them, I didn't see anything to my left, but as I looked to my right, about 10 feet on my right behind me, I saw my legs. And I knew,
Wow.
I knew that they were my legs because they had these brand new tennis shoes on them that I had just gotten for Christmas, these white tennis shoes. And it just felt like that couldn't be, that this can't be happening. This is crazy. This is not happening. This can't be real. So I just, again, tried to gather myself emotionally as best as I could. I crawled out from underneath the train and started to look at my injuries. And when I looked at my left leg, it was so dark out that I couldn't see anything there. My leg had been severed very high on my left side. So I turned my attention to my right leg where it looked like it had been severed, but I'd never seen my leg like that before. I don't think I'd ever seen an amputated leg before. So I was really just trying to make sense of it. I ran my hand below where it looked like it had been severed and unintentionally saw all the blood on my glove.
Wow.
When I did that. And that's when the pain hit me. I've been asked before if I felt pain when the train was going over me, and I for sure did. But I just feel like something was protecting me. It was much more, it was like a dull in the background sort of pain. And when I was on the side of the tracks, I saw the blood. I knew that I was alive and my legs were gone. I was in the worst pain of my life. I was crying harder than I ever had, even for my mom, the way like a small child would.
Yeah.
And in that moment, crying harder than I'd ever cried in my life before, absolutely in the worst pain I had ever been in my life before. All of a sudden, this tremendous peace just started to cover me. It was almost like a blanket. I felt like a blanket had been laid on me. And I started to hear the song Amazing Grace play over and over in my mind.
Wow.
And I didn't regularly listen to that. It was wild. I just thought, though, that this must be music from heaven. Like, I just thought like it could only be music from heaven. And I accepted that I just needed to lay there and wait to die. So I started just laying there hoping, waiting and praying to die, praying that I would go to heaven, hoping that it was real, that whatever I needed to get there, I had, not really knowing anything about that, just wanting something better than this life. So I rested in that peace. And eventually somebody found me. It says in the police report that the conductor said to the engineer, "Did you see that yellow flash?" And the engineer said to the conductor, "Yes, I think we just hit someone." The yellow flash that they had seen was my bright yellow coat as I laid down on the tracks.
Wow.
So they had called 911 unbeknownst to me. They had called 911 and all the firefighters and like paramedics, I think, were looking for me from my town and the town next to us because they just had no idea where I was. And it was a firefighter that found me first. And the reason I knew he was there is because he pulled my hair off my face and behind my ear. And I just like rose up inside. I was like, who's here? I felt all those feelings of shame and embarrassment and fear started to overflow. And I looked back to see who it was. And he stumbled back because he wasn't expecting me to be alive. I was run over by 33 freight train cars at 55 miles per hour. And I've been told that, actually at a lot of my speaking events by engineers, that I should have been torn to pieces. There's no way I should have survived this. I should have been torn to pieces. But obviously, I only lost my legs. And people—
That's amazing.
It's so weird for me to say that, but when you think about it in perspective, it is only my legs.
When you mentioned being sucked up and then having that pushed down, and then everything else that's happened, there's only one explanation for that. That's God Himself. That's amazing.
I know that was God's hand on me. I just had no idea at the time. I was like, I can like vividly remember all of this, and I remember it's almost like I can feel it pushing me down, holding me down, almost like your father would hold you to protect you, pull you away from a car in the road. That's how it felt. Just like this hand of protection was holding me down until I was safe. It was crazy. It was amazing.
So tell us a little bit about the recovery and your mental process and how you kind of were able to get through that. Because for me, it was really tough. It took 4 months for me just to get my mental aspect straight.
That was much faster. You did a great job. I was not that quick.
Oh, just to think straight, because it all seemed like a bad dream. It was like, and you said something that was extremely poignant and the same as me, as you just wanted the pain to go away. It wasn't like a rational, made sense thought to do it. You just wanted the pain to go away.
It wasn't, I don't know if that is ever really rational for it. I don't think that anybody who's thinking of that is in their mind. I think they would tell you that. Most of the people I meet, they're like, I'm just not thinking, I'm not feeling, something's wrong. I need to fix the way that I'm thinking because it doesn't feel right. So it's multi-layered. Sometimes it's the way you're thinking. Sometimes it's just the way you're feeling. Sometimes it's outside things that are happening. It's different for everybody.
How was that initial recovery in the hospital and in your family? And because when we go through those moments, we don't even think about that part. We don't even think about the family and the ripple effect of all the people that it affects. Somebody mentioned to me that when I was in that moment and I did what I did, I had shut down the entire highway. And so you're thinking, I'm by myself in this moment. Nobody cares. I just want the pain to go away. But you realize I affected hundreds of people in the cars, the helicopter, the EMS, the firefighters, your family, your friends, your coworkers.
My whole high school, right?
Yeah,
even the train engineer, the conductor. Yeah.
And you are a miracle. We all are. But one of the things I just wanted to mention was, I hear this a lot. And so I want to ask you about your faith element too, because there's people out there that have done a lot less to themselves and they're not here. And what you and I did to ourselves was so dramatic. And so in medical terms, we really shouldn't be here. And so a lot of people have a hard time with that. They're understanding, why did they save you? And this person hardly did anything and they're no longer here. How do you explain that or talk about it?
I've had people ask me that several times at my events and via instant messages or email, but I have a hard time with that one because I can't fully make sense of it. I feel like God is the only one who knows, but I had a professor once who told me he had a daughter who struggled a lot with drug addiction and she ended up passing away. And the way that he made sense of it is that it was the lesser of two evils. Like she wasn't addicted to drugs anymore. She wasn't suffering anymore. Like he knew that this was better than if she was still here suffering and struggling so badly. But I don't ever want to tell somebody that I deserve it more than their loved one did. I don't think I did. I don't think I did. I always say, like, we named all of our kids in honor of God's grace because the best way grace has ever been described to me is it's when God gives us favor and we don't even deserve it. I can't tell you why I don't know his thought.
My pastor, I'm getting baptized this weekend, this next Sunday. I joined a great church and I just felt to honor God to be baptized and live this second chance life to the fullest. And there was a couple of things I thought committing or doing what I did was, I just felt like it was an insult to Christ because it was not my life to take. It was his life he gave me. and I insulted him by taking it. So I just have been in the Word. It's been helpful. It's been an amazing journey. The fact that I'm still here and talking with you. I have a question for you. This was a question that was posed to me. So after my recovery and going through all the emotions of up and down and shame and regret, and at what point did you realize you had hope and you were going to be able to live a good life?
It was little by little. I feel like I just got seeds of hope and they just kept building. I was in and out of the hospital for several months. And in the very beginning, I remember a lot of people came to tell me, Kristen, God kept you here for a reason. There's something you're supposed to do here. And I'm sure they were trying to give me hope. It did set me searching a little bit, but for the most part, it was a little frustrating because I didn't know why I was here or why God would keep me here. What would he want me to do here without my legs? And people around me wondered the same thing. If she didn't want to live her life with her legs, how is she going to want to live her life without her legs? I had a lot of healing to do. I was in counseling for 3 years, but God was so faithful. He just continued to bring people into my life to show me who I was, to show me who he was. And one of those people was like a visiting, they were actually friends of my sister's that came to have dinner with their family just after everything that we'd been through. And I found out at dinner that the husband of this couple was in seminary to be a pastor. And I was really wondering at the time, everybody told me it was a miracle that I survived because I had lost 8 pints of blood, and scientifically you're supposed to die if it was 5. So they were saying it was a miracle that I survived. I shouldn't still be here. But when I asked them, like, what do you think would have happened to me? Everybody would say, oh, Kristen, of course you would have went to heaven. Like, they would just pat me on the head almost, and what I call the feel-good answer. But I just really wanted to know, if it was a miracle that I survived, where I would have been right then and there. So I really boldly asked this man one night who was having dinner with our family after I found out he was in seminary to be a pastor, what he thought about that. I figured he knew the Bible more than anybody else that I knew. So I just was curious what his opinion was and what he thought, if he could help me figure that out. And he very lovingly, very patiently just told me that every single one of us are created to be in this personal, real relationship with God. But because of our sin and the wrong things that we've done, we are separated from him, both in our relationship with him and eternally. And that was why Jesus died. That is why Jesus died, to pay the penalty for all our sins and to put us back into a right relationship with God. But we have to choose to accept Jesus. We have to choose to accept him for the forgiveness of our sins and choose to let him lead our life. And when he told me that, I knew that what he was telling me was something more true than I'd ever heard in my life before. But I was a little bit skeptical. I wanted him to show me in the Bible. And he showed me a lot of different verses, but the verse that stood out to me the most was John 14:6. That's where Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. And as I read that, I remember it was like the words, I just felt like Jesus could not have been more clear. And I knew that I had not come to the Father. Like, I knew I did not have a relationship with God. And I knew that I'd never personally accepted Jesus for the forgiveness of my sins or chose to let him lead my life. And I also suspected that something really special and important seemed to be missing from my life, and felt this tremendous guilt and shame from trying to take my own life and everything else I had done wrong. And just all came together at once on that day. And I remember praying on the floor of my parents' dining room. I just asked God to forgive me for everything I had ever done wrong. I realized that night that my life wasn't mine to take, like you said. I realized that God alone gives and takes life, and I asked him to forgive me for that, for everything I'd done wrong. I asked him to come into my heart, and I asked him to give me a new life. And I had no idea that was in scripture. I just wanted a new life. I just felt like I needed a fresh start. And as I went to sleep that night, I just felt a little bit different. I know that was the night that I became a Christian. Even though I would have told you my whole life that I was a Christian, I didn't really know him. But that was the biggest turning point for sure. And what I can say about when I fell asleep that night is I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Like, one way or another, I was going to be okay. With or without my legs, I was going to be fine. I didn't need to worry so much about what was going to happen to me or in my life. It was going to be okay one way or another. Yeah. And unfortunately, I didn't. The couple that shared this message with me, they gave me a Bible, but they left for the mission field. And I didn't have Christian friends. I didn't know how important it was to have Christian friends. I had the Bible, but I had no idea how powerful and important it was, like, could be in my life to read that regularly, the difference that could make. And I didn't know what a difference it could make to be part of a church. And have Christian friends, all of it. So I struggled a lot. But for the first 3 years after my attempt, I feel so bad for my parents. I was like in and out of jobs, in and out of relationships, in and out of counseling, in and out of the psych ward, in and out of everything you can imagine. It was a rough season, but there was so much good that came out of it. I learned so much. And one of the things that was really important that I learned is this woman who, in God's grace, just happened to be a Christian counselor, even though I wasn't looking for a Christian counselor, challenged me to do was memorize a verse that is in Romans. It was not something I ever did before. Like, I never had that growing up where I had to memorize verses, but she challenged me to memorize Romans 8:1, which says, "Therefore, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus." And the reason she wanted me to do that is because she realized that although I had accepted God's forgiveness, in many ways, I would not forgive myself. I had not forgiven myself. I didn't think I deserved that. I was in many ways still punishing myself for the way that this had forever changed my life and the lives of the people around me, whoever was with me and around me. And so the way that I lived that out, that happened in a lot of different ways. But when she had me memorize that verse, I didn't see it as something spiritual. I just thought like it was a challenge. And so I'm gonna try to meet this challenge because I want to get better. I do really want to get better. And as I like wrote it on the note cards and put it in my car next to my bed and in my bathroom and started to say it to myself, before and after work and everything like that, I just felt it start to seep into my heart and into my soul. And it just started to connect. I started to realize that I was no more important, no more greater, no more special than God is. And so if he could forgive me, if he in his loving kindness could forgive me, why was there no reason? Like I realized there was no reason for me not to forgive myself. I'm not more important than him. If he can do that, I can forgive myself. I need to do that. And I knew that because by not forgiving myself, it was like I saw this chasm. I could see that I was holding myself back from everything that God had for me in the forgiveness he was offering, the future that he had for me, the hope, the peace, the joy. But I was like I felt so undeserving that I just wouldn't, I had that wall. And so
No, go ahead. No, it's just, you said so many amazing things. I wanted to share something with you that my pastor had with me as I struggled and got through it all. That God's greatest will for you is to give you everything you never knew you wanted. And that is what really opened my eyes, because all my life it's been an identity issue. And it was me always trying to control the narrative, trying to control my life. I was Catholic. I thought I had God in my life, but I never really was in the Word and listened to what he's saying. And what you just said about him forgiving you, and that's why he died on the cross, so that you could forgive yourself, so you could be free and live in one. Yeah. So that was a big thing for me. So I have a question. So I found something unique. You said what year you did that was 2000. And I told you about my friend Kevin Hines. He did that in 2000 as well. So 25 years ago. But he said something and that he had instant regret. So I have a question. Knowing where your life is now, would you change anything?
I often say at the end of my events, this isn't a sad story. I would not trade everything that's happened to me, including the loss of my legs. I would not trade it for everything I've learned, and especially my relationship with God. I am so much better off having the Lord in my life and having him lead me and guide me and comfort me and walk with me and do everything with me than having legs. So while I would never choose to do that again, I don't regret it.
It's very interesting because I feel the same, because I wouldn't have the life of peace that I have now if I didn't do it. So I'm not encouraging anybody, and I'm certainly not advocating it.
No,
but I don't regret it, because I'm living the best life I possibly could be living right now. I'm at peace. I have a relationship with Christ. I'm joining in a new church. Got great friends, great work. Got a new car. Got a new place to live. I'm just so many wonderful things that can you look back at what you've been through, and now that you've got that relationship with Christ, you can see where His hand has been.
Yes.
Like. Everything that has happened to me since then, I did not ask for it. He talks through other people. They help you. They give you. It's just been amazing, some of the things that have happened for me. Like the docuseries that we're talking about. That I didn't go look for that. That just happened. And our relationship and finding each other. When you go to your events and I'm sure you adjust them for the crowd, for which kind of crowd you're with. But what's your approach in connecting? Do you just go and start telling your story, or what is your
So
approach?
I never wanted to be like a professional speaker. It just happened. Like you said, the doors just started opening and things started coming together, and God was using it. And it was helping people. So it just happened. And because it started that way, the only way I knew how to communicate was to just be open, honest, and real. Tell people my story as openly and honestly as I could. And I think that's part of the reason people have connected with me as much as they have, because I'm not pretending anything. I'm telling them. And I think that is what we need. We need real people that are really honest about what they've been through and who can tell how they've overcome. The Bible even says he comforts us so we can comfort others who struggled in the way that we have. And so I
Right.
think that's a big part of the reason that he kept me here.
One of the things I've been told is I'm extremely raw and transparent,
Yes.
honest.
Yes.
And so one of the things that was important to me, and a therapist friend of mine told me, yes, it's important for us to share how we've overcome and how we've gotten past it, and how we've healed, and how now we're sharing our story. But how did we get there?
Yeah.
Talking about that, like my situation was identity issues as a young child, making up stories and living in pretend land, and continuing that all through my adulthood, and having bad relationships, not knowing myself, or not even knowing what love really is, because I never knew who I was. And so all of these little things that take time and they build up, and then before you're trying to end it. So how do you go about that? What are some advice for you to look at? People that are in bad relationships, people that are, in bad situations, people that are depressed or anxious, or I guess I have a lot of things trying to come out of my mouth at one time, but I'm trying to ask, how do you identify that and get people to start talking about that, or noticing that their child is being absent? Or because when you were young, when you were doing all that rebellious stuff, no one really was talking to you, were they? Did the parents sit down at the kitchen table and say, let's talk about this, what's going on?
My mom and I actually did talk a lot, but not on that level. And what I think would have helped is if they would have asked me really pointed questions. This is one of the things I tell parents. If somebody would have asked me, has anybody ever taken advantage of you? I would have talked about being raped, even though I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't have said no to that question. Has anybody ever taken advantage of you? If they would have asked me, have you ever thought that you didn't want to be here anymore? Like that I could have answered. And one of the other things I say is, if somebody would have asked me how much hope I have on a scale of 1 to 10, I think I might have told you this before, because when I was in the hospital, asked me what my pain was on a scale of 1 to 10. And as a young person, I think that would have been the most telling. How much hope do you have on a scale of 1 to 10? Because if I was honest, I would have said 0, 1, or 2, and that would have been very telling with how badly I was doing.
But even with your girlfriends and the friends that you had and the ones that you were taking care of, did you ever once feel like you could have that kind of conversation with your friends?
I think a lot of my problem was that I wasn't being honest with myself. It's hard to tell other people anything if you don't want to believe it yourself. So I was just in denial. Like, I didn't want to believe I'd been raped. I didn't want to believe I was feeling I didn't want to live anymore, or like I couldn't do it anymore, or I wasn't smart enough, pretty enough, strong enough to do this life. I didn't want to believe any of it. So it was, if you're in denial, how can you, I don't know, I needed to be honest with myself first. I think that would have been the best place to start. Loving and accepting myself and my reality for what it is. Because when you're not doing that, what do you have to work from? How can you move forward from there?
There's a lot of that going on right now as far as self-love. You are enough, you are loved, you matter. And it needs to be talked about more. I think that's where social media comes in, and we have the comparison of these unrealistic people that we see on social media. And there's a lot of, I don't feel like I'm enough. You are enough. And that was my whole problem, my issues. I never felt like I was enough in the marriage that I was in. And then when it fell apart, my entire identity fell apart because I didn't know who I was, or I didn't accept who I was. Another thing that's really, are there in your life triggers still?
Triggers like towards depression or anxiety, or what do you mean?
Yeah, triggers. They use that word a lot now. It's thrown around a lot. Avoid these triggers so you don't fall into. Don't listen to that song because that reminds you of your old girlfriend or triggers.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's almost like I don't even think about it anymore. I do this so automatically. I'm very careful with what I read, what I watch, what I listen to. Not like I live a super sheltered life, but I just want to stay grounded, centered, make sure I'm not like believing lies about myself or about the world or about my future. I'm very careful with that. So I guess I am triggered somewhat, but even when I know how to like redirect my thoughts. I don't let my thoughts just run. I'm very careful with where I let my thoughts go.
I like that. I think Kevin even talks about that somewhere. It's just having not necessarily a balanced life, but being aware of what you're reading, what you're watching, what you're eating, how late you're staying up, taking care of yourself. And I think that's pretty key. I really got into a guy named David Goggins. You ever heard of him before?
Yes. I don't think
yeah.
But I
he's got he's a little bit more hardcore, and he has a different approach on triggers. Because when I first went through therapy, they were like avoiding triggers. If a certain song came up that reminded me of my ex-wife, I would turn it off right away. But I soon found myself putting myself in an emotional prison, meaning I'm avoiding all of these things in life, but it's part of life. So he goes, his approach is confronting it.
Yeah.
And just realizing it. Yeah.
So those things I do think you should confront. Like to me, I had to deal with all those types of things in counseling. And if you don't, it's going to just keep popping up. You have to face it. I agree with that. That's not what I'm saying. I mean, now, many years later, after I've dealt with all those things, how do I stay? Yeah. But I agree, you have to face a lot of those things. And there's some people who think you shouldn't go in the past. I think it's necessary to deal with whatever happened and led up to that. I think it's necessary.
What are some words of advice for people that are struggling right now? Maybe they do have some depression or recognizing that they are a little bit anxious and how to go about handling that.
One of the first things is understanding what the signs are and understanding that it's okay if one of your loved ones is struggling. It's not the end of the world. I think especially parents can tend to overreact sometimes, and that makes it worse. Like when my parents were worried, I worried more about myself. If they were worried about me, then I was like, I must really be in trouble. So keeping yourself balanced will help them find confidence as well. And I think that definitely reaching out for help. I tell people all the time, especially young people, to find a trusted friend, a trusted adult in particular that they can talk to, that they can ask for help from. I love to tell people to keep asking for help until you get all the help you need, because I think especially when you're depressed and you don't have a lot of energy, you don't want to ask more than one person or a third or fourth person. But I think we have to keep reaching out. And I think that's one of the things that helped me in the end. I kept looking for all the answers, like everything that I needed to learn until I put it all together.
And a lot of us, the phrase, it's okay not to be okay. Yes. I think a lot of people feel embarrassed to ask for help about something like that or shamed. So when that day happened for me, I had mentors. I had a pastor friend, and I have my best friend back home in Kansas. I could have called my mom. I could have called anybody. Right, one thing I've learned about that is that that support group is only good if you actually call.
Right.
And I think what through my mind and what goes through a lot of other people's minds is I don't want to have a long drawn out conversation. I just want to tell you I'm not feeling good, and I want you to. So I did this podcast with a woman in Australia, and her podcast is called "Suicide Sucks," and it does. But she had an answer for that question, because a lot of people don't want to get into a long drawn out. And that I don't want to call you, Kristen. I don't want you to try and fix me. I just want to talk to you. So she came up with this brilliant little phrase: "Do you have 8 seconds?" And that's all I need. 8 seconds to just tell you I'm not feeling good, and just be able to express it to someone. So just by opening up and saying, "Do you have 8 seconds?" It's like a trigger if you want to say, "Hey, I need to talk to somebody. I need to talk to you." So I just wanted your opinion on that.
Yeah, I think that's really wise. I think it's really wise. And that's part of what I had to do early in my survival, is almost create a safety plan. Who am I going to call if I'm doing really bad? Who's going to check in on me? Who do I need to spend time with to make sure that I'm not alone? All of those things were really important. But I think even those people knowing that you're my person, do you want to be my person if I'm in this place, is helpful, so that they know when they get that call. And and maybe have an idea of what their next steps are going to be. Are they going to come see you, or are they going to call somebody else who can come stay with you? I think all of that is really smart.
How did the speaking gig start for you?
I decided to get baptized at my church after everything started to change, and it was really just to show outwardly what had changed inwardly. And my parents came to my baptism, and my mom, I shared my story for the first time. My mom actually came to Christ at my baptism, and I thought that would be the only time, though, that I ever shared my story. I thought that it was like part of what they ask you to do in. I don't know, all churches do that, but the church I was attending did that. And so I thought like I had to do it this one time, but I would never have to do it again. So I shared it there, and the youth pastor happened to be there. And he asked me like a week later if I would share it with the teenagers. And I just never expected that, planned on that. I never wanted to do that, but he told me to pray about it. And I was like, okay, I'll pray about it. And what I came to, as much as I didn't want to talk about this, I just realized that I didn't want anyone ever to go through anything like what I did or something close to it, and have something happen to them like what happened to me or something worse before they realize how big and real and personal and faithful God is. And so I was like, if there's just one kid that's like me there, I won't regret sharing that. I have to do that. I can't say no. So I went and shared as openly and vulnerably as I could. And at the end, to my amazement and shock, almost every single one of the teenagers came up to me, told me that they struggled with suicidal thoughts or depression, or they know somebody who did. And that's when I started to realize it was a much bigger issue than I had ever understood before. And something just started to stir in me to help them, because I was just like them. I knew exactly how they were feeling. And it just snowballed from there. Another door would open, another door would open. I just kept thinking I'd share one more time, and it just kept going.
If we don't share the story, then what good is it? This is the first time in my life that I've been so comfortable and easy talking about my love for Christ. And then after what we've been through, and just finding comfort and knowing that he loves us and he's done such amazing things for us. In 57 years, I've never joined a church before. I've never signed up to get baptized before. And it's just an amazing feeling to just be free and not worry about that and just be yourself. So everybody, again, this is Kristen Jane Anderson. She has joined us, and she has an amazing story. Look her up on YouTube, and you're on Facebook and Instagram. So tell us about Reaching You.
ReachingYou.org is an organization that I started for people who are struggling with suicidal thoughts and depression. We're actually doing a fundraiser right now. We want to provide free counseling. I do events, suicide prevention, outreach events, and then we do have volunteers that help answer messages, just help people walk through life. I think a lot of times what people are looking for from me is just somebody who understands and who will listen, who cares. And so I've handpicked several people to listen and care and love on people as they're walking through their journeys, and really just growing and finding hope.
And this is how I'll leave it. Your story, my story, and hundreds of others would just be sad stories if we didn't do something with it.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing something with it. Appreciate it.